Let's make a small modification to our app. Right now, if a user signs in, they are able to still access the sign-in page, which we don't want them to be able to do because they're still able to trigger any of the code in our sign-in, mess with the auth flow. We don't want that if they're already signed in. So how do we do that? Well, what we want to do is we want to set it so that if they have a current user inside of our application, they shouldn't be able to access the sign-in route. And in order to write that code, we're going to need two things. The first is we're going to need the redirect component from React Router DOM. And then the second thing is we're going to need the current user from our Redux state. So just like we did in our header, we're going to need a const map state to props. And off of our state, we're going to destructure off our user reducer. And what we'll return is our current user prop, which is equal to user.currentUser. And now we're able to pass our map state to props to our connect so that we have access to this.props.currentUser. Now, inside of our route, we're going to switch this first to exact. And then, instead of this sign in and sign up component property, we're going to use render. And render, you can imagine, is exactly like the render key that we use in our class components. It's a JavaScript invocation that determines what component to return in the same place where component would be. Instead, it'll be some JavaScript. So here we can say that it will be a function that will determine based off of our this.props.currentUser, right? Because if it's present, then what we want to render is our redirect component that we just imported. And all it takes is that to property that tells it where we want them to redirect to. And then if not that, we want to instead render our sign in and sign up page. And that's all there is to it. So now if we go to our app, we'll see that we no longer are able to access sign in, right? It'll redirect us. So now, not only do we want that, if we hit sign out, and let's say we go to sign in, if we sign in, it should redirect us to our home page. Okay, so now that we have our redirect set up, one more modification that we should make is to our action. So right now, we saw that we're using this string, this hard-coded string, right? And in our reducer, we're referencing the same string. But one best practice that we can implement is to make sure that it's consistent in any place that might be referencing this string. So what we'll make is a new file called user.types.js. And what we're going to export from this file will be an object called user action types. And on it will be the value that points to that exact string. And now in our reducer, we are just going to import that in. Let's just use the autocomplete, and it should be user action types. And instead of set current user, we will say user action types.set current user. So now we know that it's constant and we won't have accidental typos and not know why our code is not working. We'll do the same thing in our action. We'll import user action types from our user types.js. And we'll just use the value. And now if we look, we see our code is still working the same. Okay, so now we've done our modifications. Let's commit this code as well. So we'll check the status. And we'll say git add, git commit, updating our app to redirect to home if user is signed in. And then we'll git push. And let's keep building.